Recently, baseball lost one of its family, Joe Coleman, and Joe Coleman had a significant role in the baseball family in that he is the first, his son Casey, his dad Joe, are the first three-generation pitchers all time in baseball history. Something he was super proud of, something he was hoping for. Joe and I worked together in Lakeland. He was my pitching coach for 3 years. I managed in the minor leagues for 9 years, and I had Joe as a pitching coach for 3 of them. My first year, I had a great pitching coach, a guy named Mark Johnson, but he was a rookie doing it like I was a rookie. So we were kind of learning and messing things up together. And then my first year in a full season team, I was with this gentleman, Joe Coleman, who had been in the game for so long and had so much experience, had worked at the highest level with, Joe Torre, and I wanted to hear stories, and I did hear tons of stories. I asked him tons of questions and learned so much about how to run a bullpen and how to, give your starter a break and how to be very intentional about how you run a pitching staff. Something I had no idea as a position player my whole life, and somebody who was really kind of anti-pitcher, no offense, as a position player, now managing teams, understanding that running your bullpen is really your job. And I had to learn how to do that, and he taught me from a baseball perspective that, had been in the game basically since he came out of the womb, 65 years in the game. He talked about telling stories about like Al Kaline's family, like babysitting him or something of that nature. He would just tell stories about being a Tiger and knowing these like all-time greats and striking out like great players and playing for Ted Williams and playing in Washington and telling stories about Frank Howard and how he would hit these long homers. But one of the most interesting stories about Joe, he never told me, and it was years after we worked together, 7 years to be precise. I was working for the Pirates. I got a chance to meet Kent Colby, and he shared with me a story. He'd asked me where I had been and who I'd worked for, and Kent Colby's kind of hero. The We Are Family Pirates were heroes of mine, and I was like, yeah, Joe Coleman was my first pitching coach, long season, and so forth. And he says, oh, Joe, we don't win the World Series without Joe Coleman. I said, yeah, I knew he had a ring, but I didn't kind of know what role he played. What do you mean you don't win the World Series, And he says, well, and he goes on to tell this story. They were in Chicago. It was later in the season. Their bullpen was beat up. Joe had signed. It was later in his career. He pitched some in AAA, got called up. He had a couple outings, a couple decent ones, couple whatever ones. And then they needed somebody to kind of wear it one day, basically. And this dude, I guess, according to Kent Colby, took a beating like nobody had ever seen a beating on the mound. None of these guys were begging to go into pitch. And Joe was like, no, I got it. And they were like, come on, Joe, let it, and just strikes, just pumping strikes and then whacking it, and just out of gas, just wearing one for the team, kept going, wore it. I mean, to the point, they really wanted to get him out of the game, and the guy wouldn't do it, and the game ended. They took him out for dinner, a few drinks, and they had an off day the next day, and apparently it just put their pitching back in line, and the next thing you know, they went on a run. And they say, everybody on that team will tell you that if that dude doesn't do what he did that day, they don't go on that run and win that World Series. And so the fact that they acknowledged that and the fact that he never said one word about it in 3 years shows you the humility of a baseball man who'd been in the game his whole life. And to him, he was just doing his job. His job was to wear one that day for the team, and that made the team better, and that's what he did. And a couple things just about Joe, just the memories, the way that he interacted with young pitchers was so special. He was the first pitching coach Rick Porcello really ever had. And here's a 65-year-old man and a 19-year-old kid who wins the Cy Young one day, and the only player he had in pitching coach he had in player development to start off was Joe Coleman. And so when Rick Porcello got ready for AA the next year, the next thing you know, Rick Porcello was in the big leagues. Now, is that a testament to Rick? Of course. Rick is an amazing young kid. I was blessed to be his manager, very advanced young guy. But Joe Coleman prepared that young man to go compete in Detroit the next year, and Rick will tell you the same thing. And God rest his soul, Jose Fernandez, you could say the same for. The last pitching coach Jose had before he went to the big leagues was Joe Coleman. And he used to drive Joe crazy because Jose would throw 3-0 breaking balls and he wasn't allowed to, and Joe would get so mad, like no 3-0 breaking balls, man, like throw strikes. But Jose would do it, and Joe just, it would just drive Joe to probably have another glass of wine that night. One quick story, and I'll wrap this up. But there was one day in Vieira, he got kicked out of a game, and he didn't get kicked out. It might have been the only time, honestly, in 3 years together. It was a day game, nobody at the game. It had rained a couple times. There's nobody left in the stands. The umpires were having a rough weekend, let's just say. Next thing you know, Joe says something, and there's nobody there. So, every smart aleck, Irish comment he would throw out there, they was just egging him on. Finally, they had enough. Bam, you're done. Throw him out of the game. So he goes out there, and instead of like getting his money's worth, and I'm walking slowly behind him, he goes, in 45 years in the game, loud and clear, you two are the two worst I've ever seen. And walked away. It was like a mic drop moment. And the thing that was so beautiful about it was those guys had to write in their report that night that, Joe Coleman said upon his ejection that we were the two worst he'd seen in 45 years. That doesn't look good for them. You saw their heads drop as soon as he said it. It was so calculated by the elder statesman. And everything he did was calculated. The way he walked to the mound, it would be very slow at times and deliberate. And people would think, oh, he's just old and that's why he does it. No, he wanted to give his pitcher time to breathe and to relax and get his thoughts together. So everything he did, he had a plan about how to get the player better. And man, thank you, Joe, for teaching me how to coach. And you taught me how to coach by the way you just cared about the kids. The day that Al Avila told Rick Porcello that he needed to throw more four-seamers, and you came in there and as an A-ball pitching coach, you didn't care, and you put your foot down and you said, I don't care, Al. This kid's got a bowling ball sinker, and he's got a 1.1 ERA as a 19-year-old in high A. I think he should throw more sinkers. He's the #1 starter, and he's going head-to-head with college kids. And they argued in my office, and it was a beautiful thing to see, a young, fiery, assistant GM trying to, create a better picture here. Bless Al with what his intentions were. But Joe, he's in the battle every day with his guy, and he's fighting for his guy. And I'm a young manager going, yeah, okay, I'm learning. This is awesome, And protect your player, and always look out for your player, and do what's right. And thank you, Joe, for all that you taught me in the game, and thank you for your legacy, and thank you for loving on Casey so much and showing me what it is to be a very loving, caring, proud baseball dad. And rest in peace, my friend, and blessings to your family.